What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But whatever you truly believe can become reality. You just have to believe, feel, and act as if you've already won, and the universe will begin to work in your favor. But what if I told you that this idea has been tested and proven, and has turned ordinary people into millionaires, leaders, and creative geniuses? Have you noticed how most people only believe once they see results? They say, "When I have money, I'll be happy. When I have time, I'll start. When everything's perfect, I'll change." But success doesn't work that way. It's the opposite. First you believe, then you see. Faith is the starting point of every achievement. What separates those who accomplish from those who only dream is the ability to see the invisible when no one else believes. Believing before seeing is an act of courage, because it means trusting the creative power of your mind, even when reality seems to say otherwise. And I can say that because I lived it. There was a time when I, Napoleon Hill, lost everything: money, prestige, and recognition, and I had to decide whether to give up or keep believing. I chose to believe because my mind was still my greatest wealth. When I interviewed Andrew Carnegie, he told me something that completely changed my understanding of success. He said, "The difference between the ordinary man and the extraordinary man is that the extraordinary believes first and proves later." That sentence burned into my soul like fire. At that moment, I realized that faith isn't a spiritual luxury. It's a practical tool for achievement. Carnegie built empires because he saw opportunities where others only saw crisis. That kind of vision comes from within, from a conviction that doesn't need external proof. Think about it. How many times have you given up on a project because you didn't see immediate results? How many ideas have you buried because someone said they wouldn't work? Maybe the difference between what you have and what you want is simply the time you stopped believing. Modern science confirms what I sensed more than a century ago. Research from Stanford University shows that people with a growth mindset, those who believe they can improve their abilities, are about 34% more likely to achieve higher financial and professional success. This means that faith in yourself literally changes the way your brain functions. When you believe you can, the parts of the brain linked to motivation and creativity activate. But when you doubt, the brain lowers its energy and shuts the doors of imagination. In other words, what you believe creates your chemical and emotional reality before it shapes your physical reality. I learned this during my years as a reporter before becoming a writer. One day, I was assigned to interview the most powerful man in business, Andrew Carnegie. During that conversation, he gave me a challenge that seemed impossible. He said that if I had the courage, I should dedicate 20 years of my life to studying the secret of success, interviewing the greatest men of his time, without any pay. It sounded insane. I was young, poor, and had a family to support, and how could I accept that? But something inside me whispered, "Believe, Napoleon, this opportunity isn't an accident. It's a calling." And I accepted. For years, I faced scarcity, rejection, and doubt. There were days when I didn't know where my next meal would come from. But in every one of those moments, I remembered the promise I made to myself to keep believing even when no one else did. And do you know what happened? Every obstacle made me stronger. Every failure taught me something about myself and about human nature. That faith led me to write The Law of Success, and later, Think and Grow Rich. Many people ask me, how can I believe when everything seems lost? And I answer, start by believing in small things. Faith is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. When you choose to believe, even without proof, something extraordinary happens. Your mind starts working for you, attracting ideas, opportunities, and people you once thought were out of reach. Think about your life right now. How many dreams have you buried because someone laughed at you? How many times have you sabotaged yourself by saying it won't work? Fear is natural, but it must not rule your destiny. Faith is the bridge between what you desire and what you will live. If you doubt your power, remember, every great achievement began with a thought and the courage to believe in it. That's why I want you to try a small experiment. For the next 7 days, write down a goal that seems impossible, something you've always wanted but never truly believed you could achieve. Read that goal out loud every morning and night, with the conviction that it's already yours. Not as a wish, but as a certainty. At first, it may feel strange, but with repetition, doubt begins to fade. Your mind starts to look for evidence to support your belief. That's the beginning of transformation. No one I know has ever achieved lasting success without first going through this inner process. Henry Ford believed in an engine everyone called impossible. Thomas Edison believed in a light the world could not see, and I believed in a philosophy no one wanted to hear. That unshakable faith, that blind trust in the power of human thought changed everything. You don't need luck, you need conviction. The universe responds to those who believe before they see. You can repeat 1,000 times, I am prosperous, I am rich, I am happy, but if deep inside there's fear or scarcity, nothing changes. The universe doesn't respond to what you say, it responds to what you feel. People confuse thinking with feeling. Thought is the map, but emotion drives the car. When you truly feel something, your entire body aligns with that vibration and begins to manifest it. I remember when I met Henry Ford. At that time, he was considered an eccentric dreamer. The idea of building an 8-cylinder engine in a single block was seen as a joke among engineers. Everyone said it's impossible, but Ford didn't just believe, he felt it. He acted, spoke, and lived as if that engine already existed. He told his team to keep trying, even after months and years of failure. And one day, the impossible happened. The V8 engine was born, and the world was never the same again. What made it real wasn't technical knowledge, but Ford's emotional faith that turned vision into reality. Those who live in fear attract more situations that cause fear, while those who feel gratitude attract more reasons to be thankful. Emotion is the invisible seed of visible results. Notice something interesting. Most people are controlled by the wrong emotions. They say they want to prosper, yet they spend the whole day worrying about their debts. They say they want love, but they hold on to past resentment. They claim to want freedom, yet feel guilty every time they think about themselves. It's like trying to tune in to a radio station while turning the dial the wrong way. You can desire something deeply, but if the feeling attached to it is the opposite, the result will never appear. The universe doesn't understand words, it understands frequency. I learned this lesson the hard way. There was a time when everything around me seemed to fall apart. My books weren't selling, my debts were rising, and hope was fading away. One day, walking alone, I realized I had become a prisoner of my own thoughts of failure. I spoke about success, but deep inside I felt defeat. Then I decided to change. I stopped repeating empty phrases and began to feel their true meaning. I closed my eyes and saw myself standing before large audiences, sharing my philosophy. I could feel the warmth of the lights, the sound of applause, the pride in my chest. It felt so real that my body reacted. Soon, opportunities began to appear one after another until my life completely transformed. Most people make the mistake of thinking they'll feel good once things go right, but it's the opposite. Things start to go right once you feel good. Emotion creates movement. It's the fuel of manifestation. Think about how different your day feels when you wake up excited. Everything flows better, people smile more, paths open, and time seems abundant. That's not coincidence, it's vibration. But there's one essential point. Feeling is not forcing. You can't convince yourself of something while you're internally conflicted. You must transform the feeling through repetition and constant visualization. When you visualize with emotion, your subconscious begins to accept it as truth. That's how a belief is reprogrammed. Try a simple experiment. For the next few days, close your eyes every morning and imagine you've already achieved what you desire. Feel the relief, joy, and gratitude in every cell of your body. Let that emotion fill you until it becomes familiar. At first, it might feel false, but with repetition, your mind begins to believe it. And when it believes, your behavior naturally changes. You start to act differently, speak differently, think differently, and the world responds to that shift. Think of the people who transformed their reality through the emotions they maintained. Steve Jobs said, "People don't know what they want until you show it to them." He felt the future before creating it. Walt Disney was called crazy for imagining a theme park that only existed in his mind. But he said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." And when he dreamed, he didn't just see it. He felt every sound, every color, every smile. That's the true creative power, feeling as if it's already real. Now look at your own life. What have you been feeling these past few days? Anxiety, fear, lack? Those emotions show that you're vibrating outside the frequency of what you want. Change your feeling, and you'll change your result. It's not magic, it's a natural law. The universe is a mirror. It reflects what you emit. Emotion is the most powerful language there is, and the universe only understands that language. Before asking for anything, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Believing and feeling are the fuel, but without action, nothing moves. Faith without action is like a boat without oars. It floats, but never reaches its destination. Thought creates the vision, emotion provides the energy, but action builds the bridge between dream and reality. I learned this truth the hard way during the years I wrote The Law of Success. I spent sleepless nights not knowing if anyone would ever care about my words. Doubt haunted me, criticism surrounded me, and scarcity knocked at my door. But an inner voice always whispered, keep going. Each page I wrote, even without a guarantee of success, brought me closer to the destiny I had chosen to live. That's when I understood that acting with faith means walking in the dark, trusting that the ground will appear with each step. Fear is the greatest enemy of action. What's curious is that fear doesn't exist in the future. It's created by imagination. People don't fail because they don't know what to do, but because they wait to feel ready. The truth is, no one ever feels completely ready. You discover your strength only after you start using it. When I interviewed Thomas Edison, I asked how he endured failing more than 1,000 times before lighting the bulb. He laughed and said, I didn't fail 1,000 times, I found 1,000 ways that didn't work. That answer marked me deeply. Edison didn't see mistakes as obstacles, but as part of the path. He understood that failure is not the opposite of success, it's the process that builds it. I realized then that fear paralyzes because it turns mistakes into shame. And shame kills the will to try. Action is the antidote to fear. Whenever you feel afraid, take a step no matter how small. That's how fear loses its power, by facing it through movement. Science confirms this truth. Behavioral psychology studies show that when a person keeps delaying decisions, the brain links that challenge with pain and danger. But when they act, even with uncertainty, the brain releases dopamine, the chemical of pleasure and motivation. In other words, action changes the body's chemistry and creates a positive cycle. The more you act, the more courage you feel to keep going. I experienced this transformation during one of the darkest phases of my life. I had lost almost everything: money, reputation, and faith. People said I was a failure, that my teachings were just idealism. Then I realized I was being tested by the very principles I taught. I could give in to self-pity or prove that my philosophy was true. I chose to act. I began giving free lectures, traveling from city to city, speaking about faith, purpose, and prosperity. Sometimes only 2 people attended, other times no one. But I kept going. Slowly my message began to spread. People started coming back, writing letters, applying the principles, and results began to appear. That's how Think and Grow Rich was born, not as a book of theory, but as living proof that persistent action transforms everything. The problem is that most people believe action must be perfect. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect money, the perfect company. But perfection is just an excuse disguised as prudence. If you wait for the ideal conditions, you'll spend your life preparing and never begin. The greatest achievements of humanity were born amid chaos, uncertainty, and courage. Henry Ford began his factory in a small workshop. Walt Disney was rejected dozens of times before securing the funding for his dream park. And I began writing with an old typewriter, not knowing if I'd have food the next day. But one thing was certain: I would never stop. You need to realize that every small action matters, even when no one is watching, even when it seems pointless. Every seed requires time to sprout, yet once it does, growth becomes unavoidable. Action creates movement, and movement opens the door to fresh opportunities. Successful people don't wait for inspiration. They act to uncover it. In that cycle, true power emerges. Think about it. How many brilliant ideas have you had that you never executed? How many projects vanished because you awaited the perfect moment? How many dreams are tucked away in a drawer labeled one day? One day is the trap of those who never begin. Success comes only to those who are willing to act without guarantees, despite fear, despite fatigue. Action aligned with purpose holds more strength than 1,000 flawless plans. When you act in harmony with what you believe, the universe organizes to support you. I've witnessed this many times. Ordinary people who transformed entire lives simply because they decided to begin. The difference between the one who desires and the one who attains lies in a single verb: act. You can spend years studying, planning, and dreaming, but nothing replaces the power of the first step. Success doesn't come from haste, it comes from consistency. It's the sum of small daily actions which together produce extraordinary outcomes and shape your destiny. Each time you act in faith, even without knowing the outcome, something invisible begins to work in your favor. So if there's something you've been putting off, do it today. Call, write, try, begin. It doesn't matter how small it is. What matters is that it's real. The world doesn't reward intentions. It rewards movement. Believe, feel, and act. For when faith, emotion, and action march together, the impossible becomes inevitable. There was a time in my life when everything seemed to crumble. The year 1929, the era of the Great Depression. The world was swept by fear and uncertainty. Businesses collapsed, fortunes vanished, and panic spread faster than any disease. I, Napoleon Hill, after years of teaching the philosophy of success, found myself suddenly with no money, no hope, and a family depending on me. It felt as though everything I believed in was being tested. Doubt visited me every morning. I asked myself, how can I continue speaking of faith and prosperity when the world is sinking into misery? But in that quiet moment I realized the true meaning of my own teachings. I shut myself in a modest room, sat before an empty desk, and resolved to apply to myself what I had preached for years. I wrote my goals with firm letters, envisioned the life I wanted, and felt the emotion with intensity as though I were already living it. At first, it seemed madness. I was surrounded by evidence to the contrary, but the power wasn't outside. It was within me. Every day, even when nothing seemed to change, I compelled myself to revisit that mental image with conviction. Until something unexpected happened. I received a phone call. On the other end, a voice offered me a chance to speak on the radio about success. It seemed implausible, but it was real. That simple act rekindled the flame of faith within me. It's remarkable how life tests how deeply we truly believe. Most people give up precisely when victory is about to occur. When you're vibrating on the right frequency, the universe finds a way to align. Not long afterwards, my lectures began filling up. I realized that acting despite the odds is the bridge between collapse and revival. Faith is the fuel, action is the vehicle, and purpose is the destination. When those three unite, nothing is impossible. People traveled from far away to hear my words. From that period of faith and rebuilding came my most famous book, Think and Grow Rich. It wasn't written in the comfort of success, but in the fire of adversity, and that's why it speaks directly to the hearts of those who suffer, but refuse to give up. When I began to share this philosophy, I noticed that many struggled to believe in their own power. They would say, "But Hill, the world is in crisis, unemployment is real, the bills don't wait." And I replied, "Yes, that's true, but nothing changes until you change." The mind is the starting point of every transformation. You can't create prosperity while thinking like a victim. A scarcity mindset is like an invisible anchor. The more you hold onto it, the heavier your path becomes. Today, neuroscience confirms what I already felt back then. Research shows that the brain reorganizes itself according to dominant thoughts. When you repeat fear and worry, you strengthen the neural paths that keep you trapped in lack. But when you practice gratitude, visualization, and positive emotion, you activate creativity and problem-solving areas of the brain. That's why some people seem lucky. They don't attract luck, they recognize opportunities they couldn't see before. I invite you to do an experiment with me. For 7 days, Every morning when you wake up and before you sleep, close your eyes and imagine the success you desire. But don't just imagine it, feel it. Feel the security of abundance, the pride of achieving something with your own hands, and the lightness of living in prosperity. Do it as if reliving a memory, not inventing a fantasy. The difference lies in the emotion that gives it life. When you truly feel it, the brain records that image as real and unconsciously begins to seek ways to make it tangible. That is when the mind becomes the ally of the spirit. Remember, success doesn't come from the outside in, it blooms from the inside out. You don't need to see to believe. You must believe to see. Everything you desire already exists as potential, waiting for you to tune into the right frequency. Faith is the trigger, emotion is the fuel, and action is the vehicle that takes you to your dreams. That's how I turned ruin into legacy. Not because of luck, but because I chose to believe when everyone else doubted. I chose to feel success before touching it and to act without guarantees. Looking back now, I see that every fall was only preparation for the rise. The success you were born to have is already there, waiting for your decision to believe, feel, and act as if it were already yours. When you do that, it won't be the world that changes. It will be you, and the world will respond to your new vibration. The truth is, everything you seek is already within you, waiting for one command: to believe. The most important lesson is understanding that success isn't a distant destination. It begins the moment you align your mind, emotion, and action in the same direction. Belief is the seed, feeling is the sun that helps it grow, and action is the water that turns potential into reality. When these three forces unite, nothing can stop you. Keep that vibration alive within you, and remember, every thought and step is shaping your future right now. You don't need to change everything today. Just be 1% better than yesterday. Watch the next video appearing on your screen and climb another step on your journey of wisdom and growth. Thank you for walking this path with me. I'll see you in the next video.